Hi guys, I've got Dave George here from Bikmo. We're not going to be talking about bikes today, though. Unfortunately, we are going to talk about business and growth strategies. So I'll hand over to Dave to introduce himself and Bikmo.
Hey, yeah, I'm Dave George and the founder and CEO at Bikmo. So Bikmo is a very much a specialist insurer. Our mission is to protect the world's riders and the places we ride, and we do that through building simple but comprehensive insurance policies that protect riders for when life happens. We're now operating across 5 countries, protecting over 85,000 riders. And yeah, happy to speak today.
Nice. Okay, cool. So let's wind back to when did Bikmo start? What was the inception story?
So Bigmo didn't actually start as an insurance business. We pivoted into insurance in 2014, but the original business was I wanted to use technology to build a business that made life easier for people who ride bikes. So the first iteration of that was a comparison engine, so you could find out where to buy the best bikes or kit online or locally. And we built that up from 2011, 2012, built had some good traction with the business. And it was a good lesson though. Whilst we had good traffic through the site, ultimately we made money when you click from our site into an e-commerce platform such as Wiggle or Evans Cycles, and we made a cut of that, so 4 to 6% affiliate marketing.
Mm,
Essentially, it was based on, and it's very hard to actually make enough, generate enough traffic to make enough money to pay for just the operations of the data and stuff that we wanted to do. However, insurance was on the business plan from day one in 2011, and that was to support the insurance sector in providing a better experience when a bike needs to be replaced because we know bikes better. We have this great database of bikes. But I had a chat with a chap from Hiscox in 2014 who said, "Well, why don't you build a policy?" I didn't really want to get into insurance at the time, but there was kind of three key things that made a difference for me in looking at insurance. And one was um, the user experience was generally awful in 2014 when I looked at it. It was the worst was 20 questions over 5 pages just to get a quote. So it was very old school. We knew it could be better. Number two, the risk model didn't make sense for people that have multiple bikes in their garage. You paid the same amount for every single bike, so it was prohibitively expensive for people like me who have a lot of bikes in the garage, or even if you got a family or partner and number of bikes there, it was prohibitively expensive. And number three was actually the business model that sits behind insurance. It's essentially a subscription business. For the majority of our customers pay monthly. And if you focus on retention as well as growing new business, focus on retention, then over time you build this really strong assets, this value in the business. It's less subject to fluctuations, between the years. So those three combinations meant we just went for it, and we built the original product in 10 weeks. We went to the Tour de France when it came through Yorkshire. We had a nice coffee set up, and you could either buy a cup of coffee or you could have a free coffee if you answered 5 questions about insurance. It gave us your email address. So it meant that on day one, at the end of September, when we switched the system on, we sent an email to 2,000 people, and we were selling policies from day one, and that's kind of how it started.
yeah, very cool. Okay. So curious on the affiliate marketing side of things. That that's been quite a successful business model for a few different businesses, but do you think it's because of the purchase sales cycle of bikes is inherently a bit slower and people like to shop around a lot and everything like that? What was the issue?
I think predominantly it was the amount that we were getting per transaction and the way in which we acquired our customers. So, okay, so the average basket value for an e-commerce platform in biking, let's call it £100. So you might sell a 4 grand bike,
Hmm.
and if you're making 5%, you make 200 quid like that. And you don't have to stock the bike, you don't have to send the bike, you don't all that sort of stuff. So it kind of works out. But average basket value, let's call it 100 quid,
Okay.
and let's say we make 5% of that, so we make £5. So
Yeah.
you got £5 of revenue, but to get that £5 of revenue, you have to acquire many more users than that. So £5. And if you think about how you acquire customers, predominantly for us was organic search, trying to optimize for SEO, and it was some paid search. Now, I don't know if you're probably familiar with some of the cost in Google Ads and Meta and so forth. It's very hard to acquire a customer to your website for £5. So then to actually then get 100% of those clicking through is nigh on impossible. Also, and when you're going for organic or paid performance, you're bidding against the retailers. The
Mhm.
retailers might have 30 to 40% margin, whereas you've got a very small 5% margin. And then when we're talking about SEO, well, all of those retailers are optimizing the shit out of their, pardon my French,
Mm,
of their product pages to make sure when someone searches for a bike or a component, they rank more highly. So you're competing against them with very high domain authority. So it was just that thing. I think if you became the default place to go to for most riders
mm,
when they're searching for bikes and components, you could make a lot of money. You could do well, but fundamentally, we couldn't drive that amount. Even if we had 100,000 unique users per month, it still wasn't enough to pay for all the data work, the engineering. The data thing was really hard to do it. So it was that combination of things that didn't make sense. However, I know affiliate marketing, if you're talking about certain sectors, gambling, but other kind of high margin ones where the amount you get for every sale is way higher than £5, for example.
mm.
So it can work for certain industries. It just didn't work for the industry that we were in. I think.
No, fair enough. No, that makes sense. Okay, so and then how has that been different now with the insurance side? So profitability, costings of acquiring customers, how has that changed?
Yeah, so I mean, it's very, very different. So we operate now as what's called an MGA, a managing general agent. So we do everything from pricing and policy wording through to claims management at the back end. So the entire experience you go through is a Bikmo one, and that means you get to sort of capture more of what you call the value chain or the value that someone pays. But when we started out, even as a broker, you might be making around 25% commission, give or take, and the average premium for us was around about it was 160 to 180 pounds, give or take. So yeah, in simple terms, so we made about 50 pound per policy
Mm,
for those, but you don't just make £50 in year one. Our retention rate is somewhere between 83-85%. So that means this year we'll make 85%, let's say, and optimistically, of last year's revenue this year, plus you're adding new growth every year. So it's not just about year one. If you look at the lifetime of a customer, which for us is an average 5 to 6 years, and let's say £50 revenue a year, you're talking around about £300 in value
mm.
for every customer you acquire. That is very different to £5 for a one-off sale. So the economics are very different, and it can scale very nicely as well.
Okay, okay, and still taking the same approach of obviously you had that initial launch with email marketing out to people. What are the different channels that you're using to drive people to Bigmo at the moment?
Yeah. So I'll focus on our B2C business. That's when we sell to the end consumer, the rider. We do have some commercial business. We work with Deliveroo and we insure a number of different retailers, events organizers, operators in the bike space. That it's still vertical wise, it's still purely bike. That's very much our specialism. But I'll focus on the B2C bit. So from very early on, we sold roughly 50% of our policies directly. That was through organic search, performance marketing, SEO. Press, all those different channels, and 50% has been what we call it partnerships. You might call it affinity or B2B2C.
Mhm.
That's where we work with organizations that operate in the bike space whose customers or employees or members ride bikes. So a good example of that is British Cycling.
Yeah.
I'll come back to that in a minute, or it might be Cycle Scheme, the Bike to Work scheme, the main Bike to Work scheme, Bike Register, Brompton Cycles. We work with Trek Bikes, some of these manufacturers now. So, but earlier on, it was retailers predominantly that we kind of worked with. So we never white label. We always kind of co-brand, but we basically add value to the experience, either the purchasing experience in a retailer, or say for a British Cycling member that ride bikes, that we protect their members, and that's kind of part of it. And the good thing around that is that uh, it's having quite a varied distribution channel network or ecosystem, as we kind of call it, means you have more resilience.
Mm,
One of the challenges is if you, for example, as some insurance businesses are, if you're 80% reliant on Google Ads and the algorithm changes, or someone just comes in and they're wanting to bid higher, it can really affect your business. But if you're very varied across these and things like British Cycling and some of these other partnerships, it's very hard for other people to come into that space. So you build yourself a bit of a moat, some sort of protection in terms of acquisition channels, and that's a really important thing over time. But you don't win all those partnerships on day one, and the bike sector is quite a quirky one. So we've managed to build trust over time. So we've been doing insurance over 10 years now. That trust kind of builds over time, that you manage to win larger partners. And when someone sees you that you're working with British Cycling or Deliveroo or Trek, well, they're interested because they know that these brands trust you. And one of the most important things on that is that we invest a lot of time and energy into those partnerships. We don't just set it up and then forget about it.
Mm.
We constantly work with them on marketing campaigns,
Okay.
improvements over time, and that's a really essential part of the business.
Yeah. Okay. So it's a true partnership instead of just the where it could just be more of a referral setup kind of thing. So you're actually working with them to help them grow as well. So okay. Okay.
It works for both parties because it's a revenue relationship as well. So and traditionally that is what happens in insurance. You set up a relationship, it's just referrals. They
Mm.
don't invest. It probably underperforms. There's not much love between the parties, and that actually makes it more subject to actually another insurer coming in that might treat that partner better. So we do invest time because it helps in the long term.
Okay, okay. And how does the for people that don't know so much maybe about the bike insurance market, how does the competitive landscape look? Because in life insurance, people
Yeah.
know that you've got all these different insurers. How does it look in your world?
So now is a lot different to 2014. So 2014, it was a good time to get into it. The Olympics in 2012 had gone well. The British sort of riders were doing well. So there's a lot of presence of cycling. So there was maybe two or three sort of incumbent sort of players there. But now people are kind of, as you see some success in the space and
Mm.
people see cycling growing, a lot of people flock to it. So it's very crowded. If you want to, you can go and see on the price comparison engines, money supermarkets. I mean, that in its own right is a good indication there's a lot of players in the market when comparison engines focus on that as a sector because they see there's a lot of volume coming through. They can make a difference in terms of that sector. So you can see there's a huge amount now, and I do see some consolidation coming up. We're looking to acquire some other businesses because as the market gets too crowded, it can't work for every single player. They're not cheap businesses to run. So it doesn't work for every player. But the good thing that we did do because we were in there early on was get some of these long-term partnerships, build trust in the sector. And that's something you can't do in day one. So you could, if you wanted to, set up a new bike insurance brand tomorrow. It doesn't mean you're going to sell many policies from day one, even if you spend a lot on Google.
Mm, yeah. Okay. Okay. So curious for your insight or advice on creating these partnerships with businesses because I think it will your approach with the biking industry will apply to lots of different industries as well. So how did you get that foot in the door with these big organizations like British Cycling? Sorry to interrupt. I'll let you get back to the podcast in a second. I just wanted to let you know that I have created a free scorecard, free quiz for anyone that's watching to go through. It gives you a score on how your sales process and sales function are performing. So if there's any gaps, it identifies them, gives suggestions, and it only takes 2 minutes to go through. So I'll put it in the first link in the description. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn after you've gone through the scorecard. Let me know how you got on. I might have an extra little offer for you for free as well. But I'll let you get back to the podcast.
There's a combination of things. I think you have to make yourself aware to them, which means you're not going to walk in on day one and seal the partnership.
Yeah.
The British cycling was a big one for us, and there's few times I think in our business now it's harder as you get bigger to have real step change partnerships. But at the time we launched that, which is I think 2018, 2019, that was genuinely a step change overnight sort of one for us. That was a big volume player for us. But that happened over probably about 2 to 3 years in terms of building up the relationship. And actually getting content and let them know what we did, and but we approached it not in a hard sell way. So the cycling industry, I guess, is similar to some of the industries, but not like every industry in respect of the fact that it's not the highest paid industry for the most part. This is not technology, for example. So people working there want to work within the bike industry, and because we've come from cycling in general, when we walk into someone, we don't walk in with a grey suit and a white shirt and a tie. Which makes someone straight away feel like you're being sold to within the bike industry. We go in there and we build relationships over time. And one of the interesting things with British cycling was we managed to win Cycling Ireland, which is the federation for cycling in Ireland, beforehand through a couple of connections. And we did a really good job of activating that and getting to know the team. Now, people at that level with the federation speak. So
Mm.
actually, British Cycling asked Cycling Ireland, what the experience of working was like. So again, that is a big tick in the box. And we also won Deliveroo. I think that might have even been 2017 or 18. We won Deliveroo. And straight away, whilst it's not in the wider bike space, we do invest a bit. We could do a bit more in terms of B2B marketing. So when we had that partnership, we shouted about it. Deliveroo shouted about it. So all of a sudden, British cycling is seeing these things that sort of ticks in boxes. We make sure we appear in the bike press. So you're building trust over time, such that at the point when we managed to go in and have a conversation with them, because it's not, they did have an incumbent in there at the time, Cycle Guard, but Cycle Guard, similar to what I said before, had not invested any time in improving the product,
Mm,
supporting them with communications, with marketing, really showed the value in terms of the partnership. So it wasn't too hard to demonstrate a clear differentiation in value at that point in time, that it was better for the customers, better for the members. So it was a combination of those things over time. So whilst we have a long pipeline of partners, some we expect to close in 3 months. It might be a retail chain or something. So it might be 6, it might be 12 months, but you know, you have to accept that there might be longer sales cycles for some of those partnerships. But the whole point of that is when you snag them, they might be partners for 5 years or 10 years that can really make a difference to your business. So it's important to make that time early on to invest in and not expect that if you don't get the sale on day one or on the first call,
mm.
that you still work at that relationship over time.
Yeah, okay. No, that makes sense. So it's very much what I'd call taking almost a Dream 100 kind of style approach into a campaign of having your big whale clients that you're
Yeah,
going after, and then but then still with all of the other ones that don't fall into that whale client category, you're still taking like account-based marketing approach instead of mass marketing approach.
absolutely. Be
Okay,
focused.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious if there's been any sales strategies that you've tried and they've completely flopped, or anything that you can share on that.
I don't mind sharing at all. And so there's the 80/20 rule is applies to many different parts of the business, where 20% of your customers or your partners might do 80% of the business. That sort of approach, and it still is quite relevant for us. And one thing we've recognised recently. So we're a regulated business. We're in an insurance intermediary. We have to make sure that the people we work with, our distribution partners, are appropriately regulated themselves, have the right sort of oversight and so forth. And it's hard to have oversight over a large number of smaller partners. And when you look, if you have a lot of partners that aren't driving business, not only is that an issue because you have this big partnership network that you might be maintaining, spending effort on, from our perspective, from a regulatory standpoint, it's not good either that people you have a relationship and they're not driving business. So quite some time ago, we basically just tried to sign up loads and loads of retailers
Okay.
in a way that you can't maintain each one of them in the same way that you can a big client.
Mm,
So inevitably, if someone hasn't heard from you for 3 months or 6 months or whatever, then they might not do that much business for you. Genuinely, in sort of a retail environment as well, you need to invest into the partnership, make sure they're supported, the floor staff understand what they can and can't do in terms of the product as an insurance that's related to the bike. So we're actually in the process of clearing out sort of the underperformance now. So we have gone down that route and had a look. One of the other ones that we looked at was employee benefit platforms, which most people have got now.
yeah.
Um, some work better than others, but you get these big clients on board. Wow, they might have 4 million employees across this platform,
Yeah.
but the reality is that maybe 40%, 50% engage with the platform. Most don't.
Okay.
And then you've got this sort of funnel that goes down to people that engage with the platform, people that ride bikes,
Mm,
people that ride bikes that might be might be browsing the platform and have an interest in buying insurance. And even at that point, you need to hit them at the right sort of point in time. 80% of our customers, the trigger for buying insurance is buying a new bike. It
okay.
won't surprise you with that, same as with a car. So unless you're part of the sort of point of sale or the sales cycle,
Mm,
which arguably when you're looking at an employee benefits platform, most people won't be at the point of buying a bike. It ends up being a sort of trickle through some of these platforms. So it's also worth sort of considering the wider, whilst it might seem good to start with, 4 million employees,
yeah.
if you're getting a trickle through, actually the amount you want to invest into that might be better to do a mid-sized retailer, in terms of our business. So it's looking at the economics of different channels.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So how do you approach it? Because I've seen a real range in the insurance industry of how distribute. channels are managed. So whether there's business development managers per a certain amount of accounts, if it all goes into one person, yeah, how do you set that up?
So we have so a bit of a mix. So we have partner success. One particular guy that sort of pulls on other resources. It's a partner success manager,
Mm.
and then we have our sort of sales guys on top of that, and it sort of flows through. So as well as sort of the overall manager. So Luke and some of the other team basically go out and win the partnerships. They're very used to doing that, and then they'll pass them on to the success team. The success team will make sure that people are educated in what they can and can't do, the things I said before. They're furnished with the right information and that side of things, and also then the monitoring after that to see how people are doing. We have annual reviews. We have sort of quarterly monitoring we need to do as part of that as well. But we do segment that because you can't. And actually, I think the skills or behaviors of a pure sort of sales and building, having conversations, partnerships is sometimes quite different to those ones who want to nurture. You got your kind of hunter gatherer. There's different sort of ways of saying the same thing, but
Yeah.
we've sort of identified it is very useful to have different people for those different roles.
Okay. Okay. Very cool. And what's your plans then to drive business across the next year?
So, there's we've got a combination of two things. One is optimizing existing sort of partnerships, so really sort of investing heavily into understanding those,
Mhm.
because it's much better to work on an existing relationship or more efficient to do that than it is to try and win a new one where there might be some uncertainty. So we're investing heavily into existing partnerships. In terms of new partnerships, the team are doing a cracking job this year. So we're kind of combining, focusing on our commercial business. That's ensuring larger retailers with combining that with the B2C as well. So we might insure a large retail chain, for example, but we want to give away free insurance to the riders at the point of sale. So the two things work in combination really effectively. They were very, very nicely. And then we've got additional channels as well. So bike leasing is something that is big in Europe, but is not so big in the UK. So we have cycle to work. So basically you pay for over 12 months, you pay for a bike.
Yeah.
Sort of after tax, sort of pre-tax. That means that you save that on it. But it does mean that especially if you're buying an e-bike, might be 3, 4, 5,000 pounds. That's very expensive in a monthly payment. Most people can't afford that. Bike leasing, by comparison, you pay that over 3 to 4 years, similar to car leasing, but you include insurance with that. You include, servicing and all the rest of it. So it's kind of like a one-stop shop. So that's a really big channel in Europe for us. So we've invested in people and technology to start to win in that market. So that's again adding still same sector, same vertical,
Yeah.
but it's just adding another distribution channel to it as well. And then also focusing on existing customers. Retention is one of the biggest assets. 70% of our business is our retained book. And despite the fact we're growing faster every year, we're acquiring more customers. Investing into that existing book of business will, all the two things in combination work really well. We've invested into a chief experience officer that joined us from Canyon Bikes,
Okay.
Gemma, who's doing a cracking job. She's again working on some of the kind of current optimizations, but there's a bigger customer experience piece that we're going to be looking at to enable more of our customers to get more value out of our existing products and also offer some additional services. So it's quite a few different things to look at, as well as I mentioned, potentially some acquisitions.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Okay. Very cool. So it's yeah. I think where a lot of people probably go when they get to your stage is to go say, okay, well, we're in these countries now. Let's go all over the world. But you're from the sounds of it taking more of the approach of let's maximize the countries that we're in at the moment and improve the experience and just keep growing that way. Which I think it's the do more better, do what you're doing already but better instead of do more. Um,
So it is likely, I will add, so it is likely we'll launch in at least 2 more countries this year, but we're going to do it in quite a different way. So we
mm,
launched in Germany and Austria in 2018. That was after Brexit was a bit of a kick at the arse to do something in Europe. And through having a GmbH, a German registered business and licensed business, we can
mm,
then transact across Europe. So the in terms of working with our existing partners, is actually growing into other countries with existing partners. So there's a lot of risk if you launch into a new country and try to start from scratch.
mm,
In part because insurance is an industry based on trust, and you don't, as I said before, you don't get trust on day one.
Mm,
But if you enter with a brand partner where people trust Trek or Brompton or some of these other brands that we work with, they're more likely to take the free cover at the point of sale and then sort of transact that over time. So we would be very measured in the way we do it. We're not going to distract ourselves with lots of different things, but it's likely to support those partners and sort of expand that we would do a couple of we'll make a couple of smart moves in terms of territories.
nice, yeah, and I think it still comes down to that core of your giving your current customers that it's supporting them better. So it's you're giving that current customers a
Absolutely.
better strengthening the relationship. So okay,
Absolutely.
no,
Yeah.
cool. That sounds good. So yeah, where should people go to find you? Share your LinkedIn, your website. Where should people go?
Yeah, I mean, if you head to bikmo.com, it'll probably navigate you to the right territory page, depending on where you live. It'll pick up your IP address. You can find me on LinkedIn under David George. Just do David George Bikmo. I'll come straight up there and interested. If anyone's got any questions that come out of this afterwards, please reach out. Not an issue at all. I'll respond when I can.
Perfect. And I think I'm going to go through your customer experience soon, hopefully, because I've been lucky enough to pick up a new bike recently. So yeah, I'll go through the experience.
Fantastic. That sounds great. Thanks, Cormac.
Cheers.